Greetings, fellow UPSC aspirants, and welcome back. This is the deep dive for May 20th, 2025, part one of your daily current affairs update.
That's right. As you navigate this, sea of information, we're here to pull out the really crucial bits, give you some clarity, and hopefully save you some valuable time.
Exactly.
Oh.
And remember, some of these topics might sound familiar. Think of them as useful revisions from our previous discussions. If this helps your preparation, please do consider liking and subscribing.
Today we're connecting some seemingly quite different events. We'll look at the sheer power of tornadoes, shifts in geopolitics, scientific breakthroughs, and even challenges to, environmental stability.
All vital knowledge for your UPSC prep. Okay, let's dive right in.
Let's do it.
Our first topic takes us to the southern United States. There have been severe storms, devastating tornadoes really, in Missouri and Kentucky, causing tragically over 20 deaths. A stark reminder of nature's force.
Absolutely. A tornado basically is this violently rotating column of air, right? It stretches from a thunderstorm right down to the ground. You know it by its rapid cyclonic spin and often, though not always, that visible funnel cloud.
So if conditions are dry, you might not actually see the classic funnel shape.
Precisely. In low humidity, what you might see is just a swirl of dust and debris near the ground level. And if one forms over water, we call that a waterspout.
Right. And the wind speeds are just incredible, aren't they?
They really are. Typically, you're looking at 105 to maybe 322 kilometers per hour. But they can certainly go higher, causing huge damage. They usually move along at about, say, 97 kilometers per hour. But sometimes they can just stall, sit there, making the destruction even worse in one spot.
What's the atmospheric recipe, so to speak? What causes them to form?
It really starts with air masses colliding. You need warm, moist air hitting cool, dry air, especially if there's a low-pressure system involved. That gets you thunderstorms.
Yeah.
Then you add in cyclonic circulations, that spinning motion in the atmosphere and atmospheric instability, where warmer air is trapped below cooler air and wants to rise fast. Put that all together, and you've got the potential for a tornado.
Is this mostly an American problem? Or do they happen elsewhere?
Oh, definitely elsewhere, too. Although the U.S., particularly what's called Tornado Alley, sees the most frequent activity. But they're pretty common in mid-latitude regions, generally between 20 and 60 degrees latitude, north and south. That's where polar and tropical air often meet. Argentina and Bangladesh, for instance, are also quite prone.
And how do scientists actually measure how strong a tornado is?
They use something called the Enhanced Fujita Scale, or EF scale. It goes from EF0, which might just break some branches, up to EF5. And EF5 is catastrophic. It can completely destroy well-built houses. You know, the increasing frequency we're seeing really underscores the need for better infrastructure and warning systems.
Absolutely. Okay, moving from natural forces to political ones, let's head to New Caledonia. Attempts by the French overseas minister to broker a new political deal there have failed. That leaves things quite uncertain for this French Pacific territory.
Right. New Caledonia, it's in the southwestern Pacific, just east of Australia. You've got the main island, Grande Terre. That's where the capital, Noumea, is. Then there are other groups like the Loyalty Islands, Belle archipelago, Isle of Pines, and some more remote islands.
And the population?
Around 270,000 people as of the last census. About 39% are the indigenous Kanak people, and the rest are of European, Polynesian, or other origins.
What's its connection to the European Union? Is it part of the EU?
It's a bit complex. It's an EU, overseas, country, and territory, an OCT. So it has a special association, but importantly, it's not part of the EU itself. It doesn't use the euro, and it's not in the Schengen area.
And the political instability, the push for independence has been going on for a while.
Oh, yes, quite a while. The Kanak people were there first, of course.
Right.
France took control back in 1853. Post-World War II, Kanaks gained citizenship, but significant French migration meant they became a minority in their own land. That really fueled the independence movement.
There were agreements, right? The Matignon and Noumea Accords.
Exactly. The Matignon Agreements in 88 and then the Noumea Accord in 98. These paved the way for more autonomy and set up 3 independence referendums. The first 2, in 2018 and 2020, voted to stay with France.
But the third one was different.
Yes, the 2021 referendum also resulted in a Remain vote, but it was heavily boycotted by the Kanak independence movement, leading to a lot of anger and the current deadlock. The failure of these recent talks just adds to that uncertainty.
Why is New Caledonia so important for France to hold on to?
Several reasons. Strategically, its location is key. It gives France a significant military and geopolitical foothold in the South Pacific, especially important now with growing global interest in the region. Economically, it's very rich in nickel, holds something like 25% of the world's reserves.
Wow, that's substantial.
It is. And finally, there's the ecological value. The lagoons are a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so it's a mix of strategy, economics, and, well, prestige. This situation really raises questions about France's long-term vision for its role in the Pacific.
Indeed. Okay, shifting gears now from the Pacific to Eastern Europe. Ukraine's military intelligence is reporting that Russia plans a, quote, training and combat launch of its RS-24 Yars ICBM. Sounds like a clear message.
It certainly seems intended that way. The RS-24 Yars, which NATO calls the SS-29, is a modern Russian intercontinental ballistic missile system. It's been in service since around 2010, designed to replace older missiles like the SS-19 and SS-18.
And its main selling point, so to speak.
Its key feature is its claimed ability to penetrate heavily protected targets and defeat current ballistic missile defense, or BMD, systems.
What makes it so good at getting through defenses? Is it the MIRV capability?
That's a big part of it, yes. The Yars is a three-stage, solid propellant missile. Being solid propellant makes it easier to move around and launch quickly. And yes, it's MIRV capable.
MIRV meaning?
Multiple independently targetable reentry vehicles. So one missile can carry multiple warheads up to 10, reportedly each capable of hitting a separate target.
Right, that definitely complicates things for defenses.
Absolutely. And it can be launched from fixed silos or mobile launchers, which makes it harder to track and destroy before launch.
What about its size and range?
It's estimated to be about 22.5 meters long, 2 meters in diameter, with a launch weight around 49,000 kilograms. Its range is quite significant, minimum around 2,000 kilometers, maximum up to 10,500 kilometers. It uses an advanced guidance system combining inertial navigation with Russia's GLONASS satellite system.
And the warheads.
Each of those MIRVs can carry, it's believed, a 300-kiloton thermonuclear warhead.
And how does it actually evade missile defenses during flight?
It's designed to maneuver during its flight path, making it harder to predict and intercept. Plus, it can deploy decoys, both active ones that might jam radar and passive ones that look like real warheads to overwhelm the defense systems. It really highlights this continuous cat-and-mouse game between offensive missile tech and defensive systems.
It's a sobering thought. Okay, let's move to a different kind of political dynamic. Our next stop is Portugal. It seems to be heading for another minority government after the recent elections. Does this suggest voters aren't happy with the main traditional parties?
That seems to be the interpretation, yes. A minority government often indicates fragmentation and perhaps some level of discontent. Portugal itself, geographically, it's the westernmost country of mainland Europe, sitting on the Iberian Peninsula, sharing a border with Spain.
And its political system.
It's a unitary, semi-presidential republic, but it operates with a parliamentary democracy. It also includes the autonomous regions of Madeira and the Azores archipelagos out in the Atlantic.
Lisbon, the capital, played a huge role historically, especially during the Age of Discovery, didn't it?
Right.
That connects it to India's past, too.
Absolutely. Lisbon is one of Europe's oldest cities and was a critical seaport during the Age of Discovery, launching voyages that, yes, deeply impacted India's history through Portuguese colonization.
What's the general climate and terrain like?
It's generally a maritime temperate climate. Cooler and rainier up north, warmer and drier down south. The Tagus River is a major feature, kind of dividing the country more mountainous in the north, rolling plains in the south. The highest point isn't actually on the mainland. It's Ponta do Pico on Pico Island in the Azores.
And thinking about that India connection again, the liberation of Goa is a key point, isn't it?
Exactly. Goa remained under Portuguese rule for centuries until 1961, when it was integrated into India through Operation Vijay. It became a full state later, in 1987. That history is definitely relevant context for India-Portugal relations.
Fascinating. Okay, our next dive takes us into the world of molecular biology, which can be quite complex. We're looking at the enigma of something called A to I mRNA editing in animals. Recent research from China highlights just how, well, puzzling its persistence is.
Right, let's try to break this down. So, DNA holds the recipes, the genetic code. This code gets transcribed into messenger RNA or mRNA using the bases A, U, G, and C. Then ribosomes read this mRNA to build proteins.
Okay, standard biology so far. What's the editing part?
So in A to I mRNA editing, a specific enzyme called ADAR actually changes one of the mRNA bases after it's been made from the DNA template. It converts adenosine A into something called inosine, API.
And how does that affect the protein building?
Well, the ribosome, when it reads the mRNA, interprets this inosine I as if it were guanine G. So effectively, you've changed the code post-transcription without altering the original DNA recipe.
Ah, so you can get different proteins from the same gene.
Exactly. It's a way to create functional diversification, basically, getting slightly different versions of proteins with potentially different stabilities or activities, all from one gene. It adds a whole layer of complexity and flexibility.
That sounds incredibly useful.
Yeah.
But the research mentioned a major risk.
Yes, there's a significant potential downside. It involves stop codons. These are specific 3 base sequences like UAG or UGA that tell the ribosome, okay, stop building the protein here. But if an A in that stop codon, say UAG, gets edited to an I, the ribosome reads it as UGG. UGG doesn't mean stop. It codes for an amino acid tryptophan. So the ribosome just keeps going, potentially creating proteins that are way too long or don't function correctly. That seems pretty risky.
So why does this editing mechanism persist if it's so risky? Does the research shed light on that? It mentions something about PSC genes.
Yes, the researchers looked at a fungus, Fusarium graminearum. They found 71 genes, which they called PSC genes, that naturally have a premature UAG stop codon in their unedited mRNA. So without editing, these genes would produce truncated, likely non-functional proteins.
Okay.
But when they deleted these PSC genes entirely, it didn't really affect the fungus during its normal asexual growth. However, it caused major problems during its sexual development phase. This showed that this A to I editing, which presumably fixes that premature stop codon in these specific genes, is actually essential for certain critical life stages, despite the risks.
So it's a trade-off, perhaps. The benefits in specific situations outweigh the general risks.
That seems to be the implication, at least in this fungus. It highlights how complex evolution is. The seemingly dangerous mechanism is actually vital. It helps explain why A to I editing is so widespread in animals, even though we're still figuring out all the reasons why. It really pushes our understanding of gene regulation.
Very intricate stuff. Okay, let's shift focus back to India and space technology. ISRO recently faced a setback with the PSLV C-61 mission from Sriharikota. It was meant to put the EOS-09 satellite into a sun-synchronous polar orbit, but it failed due to an issue in the third stage. What exactly is the PSLV?
PSLV stands for Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. It's really one of ISRO's signature rockets, a 4-stage vehicle. Its primary job, as the name suggests, is launching satellites into sun-synchronous polar orbits. These orbits are really useful for Earth observation satellites like EOS-09 was intended to be.
Is it only for polar orbits?
Mostly, but it's quite versatile. It uses different engines and propellants across its 4 stages, allowing it to carry medium-weight payloads pretty precisely not just to polar orbits, but also to other orbits like Geosynchronous Transfer Orbit or GTO.
Can you walk us through the stages? What kind of propulsion do they use?
Sure. It uses alternating solid and liquid propulsion stages. The first stage, the big one at the bottom, uses HTPB-based solid propellant. In its most powerful XL configuration, it also has 6 large strap-on boosters, also solid propellant attached around it. That first stage gives it a huge initial push, about 4.8 meganewtons of thrust.
Okay, stage 1 is solid. What about stage 2?
Stage 2 uses a liquid-fueled engine called Vicus. It burns UDMH and nitrogen tetroxide, providing around 0.8 mN of thrust.
And the third stage, that's where the issue was this time, right?
Yes, reportedly. The third stage goes back to solid propellant, again HTP-based. And finally, the fourth stage, which does the final orbital insertion, uses 2 smaller liquid engines, burning MMH and MON.
It's often called the workhorse of ISRO, isn't it? Why that nickname?
It's earned that title through sheer reliability and versatility over decades. It's had a very high success rate, launched numerous Indian and international satellites, including landmark missions like Chandrayaan-1 and the Mars Orbiter mission. Its ability to handle different orbits and multiple satellites per launch makes it incredibly valuable for ISRO. This failure, while unfortunate, is a reminder that space launch is inherently complex and risky.
Indeed. Now let's turn to India's rich literary heritage. The president recently conferred the 58th Jnanpith Award on the noted Sanskrit scholar Jagadguru Ramadracharya Ji in New Delhi. Tell us about the Jnanpith Award.
The Jnanpith Award is, quite simply, India's highest literary honor. It's given annually for outstanding contributions to literature in any of the Indian languages recognized in the 8th schedule of the Constitution, plus English.
When did it start, and what does the award entail?
It was instituted back in 1961. The award itself consists of a cash prize, a citation plaque, and a bronze replica of Vagdevi, who is Saraswati, the goddess of learning. It's sponsored by the Bharatiya Jnanpith, a literary and research organization that's been promoting Indian literature since 1944.
Who received the very first award?
That was the renowned Malayalam poet G. Sankara Kurup back in 1965 for his work Odakuzlo, the flute.
Are there specific rules or criteria for eligibility?
Yes, a few key ones. The recipient must be an Indian citizen, and the award is generally given to living authors for their overall contribution, not just a single work. Also, once a language receives the award, it's not eligible for consideration for the next 2 years. And importantly, a writer can only receive the Jnanpith Award once in their lifetime.
Can they decide not to give the award in a particular year?
Yes, the selection board has the discretion to not confer the award if they feel no proposal meets the required standard for that year.
And just to be clear, this is the highest literary award. What would be considered the second highest?
Yes, Jnanpith is the highest. The Sahitya Akademi Award, given annually by India's National Academy of Letters for works in various Indian languages, is generally considered the second highest literary honor in the country.
Good to know. Okay, next up, a topic concerning Indian governance and the Constitution. Presidential reference. President Draupadi Murmu recently referred 14 questions to the Supreme Court using Article 143. What exactly is a presidential reference?
It's a specific constitutional mechanism provided under Article 143. It allows the President of India to seek the advisory opinion of the Supreme Court on any question of law or fact that has arisen or is likely to arise, which is of such public importance that it's expedient to obtain the court's opinion on it.
So it's a way for the executive to get legal clarity from the top court without actual litigation?
Exactly. It provides a channel for the executive to get authoritative judicial guidance on complex legal or constitutional issues before taking action, or when a significant doubt arises.
Article 143 seems to have two parts. What's the distinction between 143 and 143 and 140?
Right. Article 143.1 is the more commonly used one. It allows the president to refer any question of law or fact of public importance, as we just discussed. Article 143, on the other hand, deals specifically with disputes arising out of pre-constitutional treaties, agreements, covenants, SANADs, or similar instruments. For references under 143, the Supreme Court is obliged to give its opinion, whereas under 143.1, it technically has discretion, though it usually does provide an opinion.
Is the Supreme Court's opinion given under Article 143 binding on the president or the government?
No, strictly speaking, it's advisory in nature and not legally binding like a judgment in a litigated case would be. However, it carries immense weight and persuasive authority, representing the view of the highest court in the land, and is generally given due consideration by the government.
Does this mechanism have roots in tree independence law?
Yes, it does. Its origins can be traced back to Section 213 of the Government of India Act, 1935, which allowed the Governor-General to refer questions of law to the federal court for its opinion.
What's the procedure when a reference is made? And can the court refuse to answer?
The president acts on the advice of the Union Council of Ministers when making a reference. The Supreme Court usually constitutes a special bench, typically of at least 5 judges, to hear the reference. And yes, as mentioned, particularly under Article 143.1, the court can decline to answer a reference if it feels the questions are, say, purely political, hypothetical, vague, or perhaps unnecessary.
Do other major democracies have something similar?
It varies. Canada, for instance, has a similar provision allowing the government to refer questions to its Supreme Court. The United States, however, with its very strict interpretation of the separation of powers and the case or controversy requirement, does not have a mechanism for purely advisory opinions from its federal courts.
Interesting comparison. Okay, let's shift focus geographically into Maharashtra. There's been some action concerning the Indrayani River. The Pimpri-Chinchwad Municipal Corporation, the PCMC, recently demolished 36 apparently illegal bungalows built within the river's blue floodline in Chikali. Tell us more about the Indrayani River itself.
The Indrayani River is located in Maharashtra. It's a significant tributary of the Bhima River, and the Bhima, in turn, flows into the Krishna River system, so it's part of a larger network.
Where does it originate and flow?
It's primarily rain-fed and originates in the Western Ghats near the popular hill station of Lonavala. It flows eastwards through the Pune district before eventually merging with the Bhima River near Tulapur. Its total length is about 103.5 kilometers.
You mentioned the demolition was within the blue floodline. What does that signify?
The blue floodline typically marks the area along a river that is projected to be inundated during a major flood event, often defined as a 100-year flood. Construction within this high-risk zone is usually heavily restricted or prohibited to prevent damage and loss of life during floods.
Does the Indrayani have cultural or economic importance beyond just being a river?
Oh, absolutely. It holds great religious significance in Maharashtra. Two very important pilgrimage towns are located on its banks. Alandi, which is famous as the site of the Samadhi, final resting place, of the medieval Saint Dinashwar, and Dehu, known as the birthplace and hometown of the revered poet Saint Tukaram.
So very sacred.
Very much so. Economically, it flows through the large industrial twin cities of Pimpri-Chinchwad, providing water resources. It's also important for irrigation, supporting local agriculture along its course. And there's the Valvan Dam built on the river at Kamshet, which is used for hydroelectric power generation, so it's quite multifaceted in its importance.
Right. Okay, our final deep dive for this first part takes us out to the Atlantic, specifically to Spain's Canary Islands. There have been large protests there recently against mass tourism. Where exactly are the Canary Islands?
The Canary Islands are an archipelago, a group of islands located in the North Atlantic Ocean. They are situated off the northwest coast of Africa, considered part of the Macaronesia region, along with the Azores, Cape Verde, and Madeira.
But they are part of Spain, right? Even though they're closer to Africa.
That's correct. Politically, they form an autonomous community of Spain, but geographically, yes, they are much closer to Africa, only about 100 kilometers west of Morocco at their nearest point, than they are to mainland Spain. The largest and probably best-known islands include Tenerife, Fuerteventura, Gran Canaria, and Lanzarote. The capital is shared between Santa Cruz de Tenerife and Las Palmas de Gran Canaria. The total land area is around 7,447 square kilometers.
What's their geological origin and the climate?
They are volcanic islands, formed by volcanic eruptions over millions of years. In fact, Spain's highest mountain peak, Teide Peak, which rises to 3,718 meters, is a volcano on the island of Tenerife. The climate is generally described as subtropical, characterized by warm temperatures year-round with relatively little seasonal variation, often moderated by ocean breezes.
That climate and location must make them incredibly popular for tourism.
Absolutely. Their pleasant climate, volcanic landscapes, beaches, and strategic location relatively accessible from Europe, Africa, and even the Americas have made them a massive tourist destination, attracting millions of visitors each year. These recent protests really highlight the growing tensions often seen in popular destinations between the economic benefits of tourism and concerns about its impact on the environment, infrastructure, housing costs, and local quality of life.
A complex balancing act indeed. Well, that brings us to the end of this first part of our deep dive for today. We've certainly covered a lot of ground, from tornadoes in the U.S. and political issues in New Caledonia to Russian missile systems, Portugal's government, the intricacies of mRNA editing, ISRO's PSLV, India's top literary award, presidential references, river management in Maharashtra, and tourism pressures in the Canaries.
We hope this has provided you, our listeners, preparing for the UPSC with a concise yet comprehensive overview of these important current events from May 20th, 2025, Part 1. Remember, as you study, try to connect the dots between these seemingly disparate topics. How do environmental issues link to governance? How do geopolitical tensions impact technology or economy?
That's a crucial skill.
Yeah.
Understanding those broader contexts is so important. And on that note, here's a final thought to mull over. Considering this increasing global interconnectedness, just how vital is it for our future civil servants to possess a truly broad understanding, encompassing everything from natural disasters and scientific advances to complex geopolitical shifts?
Yeah.
Something to think about.
Definitely.
We certainly hope this deep dive has been a valuable part of your UPSC journey today. If you found it helpful, please do like this session and subscribe for more analysis to aid your preparation.